G'day, Alex Collins with the Bendigo Sheep and Lamb Market Report for the 9th of August for McKean McGregor. An interesting day in Bendigo, 13,000 lambs yarded and about 8,500 mutton. On the lambs, certainly sold to a cheaper trend today, in line with sort of what we saw at the back end of last week. Coming off some pretty extreme sales over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, we certainly saw a much cheaper trend. Mostly the lambs that were affected, you've sort of got 2 categories: your well-finished grain-fed lambs, and then your lambs off grass that are showing full effects of the winter and not as neat and sort of longer in leg. So those lambs, the rougher type lambs, they're certainly, they could be anything from sort of 60 cents to $1 a kilo different to your really neat grain finished lambs. So your real big heavy lambs, not as much weight there today, and probably not as much affected in the price correction. Lambs still up to a top of about $300. A lot of those heavy lambs, $830 through to $870 or $80, depending on quality, as I mentioned. Down into your trade weights, that's where we saw the real sort of the real divide between the 2 categories of lamb there. Your lambs that the supermarkets were still involved in, $880 to $920. They still sold pretty well, not as extreme as what we've seen the last few weeks, but not too bad. Your clean-up type lambs that are trade weighted but not neat enough for the supermarkets, certainly cheaper there. Some of those lambs, they could be 25 cheaper on what we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks. Merino lambs, your better end of them still sold pretty well, $8 to $840 or $50, depending on probably skin length a lot of the time there. Not a lot of light lambs there to quote, but those sort of MK type lambs, they're selling to mixed competition depending on quality again. On the sheep side of things, we saw, I will mention new seasons lambs, a few more new seasons lambs there today. There's probably 2,500 of those. They're not making a lot different sort of cents a kilo money to what some of the neater old lambs are, but they're a little bit cheaper than last week. Your sort of trade weighted suckers that were making $220 last week are back to sort of $205 to $210. So I think probably 5 to 8 cheaper there on them. Immature suckers that are sort of lacking that little bit of sunshine, a little bit of bloom, are probably back from $175 to $185.90. On the sheep, a little bit the same story as the lambs. The better covered, heavier end of the sheep sold pretty well. They're a fraction cheaper. Not too bad though. Most of your heavy crossbred ewes, $245 to $255. The extra sort of top end of those. All your heavy merino sheep, heavy weathers out to $240. Well covered merino ewes, 200 plus certainly. Your secondary sheep, they've been selling exceptionally well. They were the ones to feel the effects a little bit today. I think they're probably 10 cheaper on the day. So yeah, interesting with a couple of processors out this week for a little bit of maintenance and probably a little bit of price resistance, I think, happening with some of these processors off the really extreme rates we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks. So until next week, we'll catch up with you then. Thank you.